travel, trying to get folks here, and in one instance now trying to get some folks out of here. Lots of problems with connections. And so we are going to open up the next speaker, Gunnar LaCour. Do we have a connection with Gunnar? So Gunnar and I spoke a few years back, certainly about the need and understanding for affiliates to know the sources of the revenue from the racetrack and understanding that pathway and having an auditing system in place to really understand and make sure horsemen were getting their proper percentages. And that kind of spun into some deeper conversations. One affiliate in particular had gone through some issues, and Gunnar enlightened me on their services at Crims and what they could do for affiliates. So I really felt as if, and certainly started to believe, Crims could definitely be a positive member benefit for the National HBPA and its affiliates. So I'm thankful to Gunnar for really seeing that missions and having that same vision. And, regardless, as he would say, whether it's Crims or not, you got to get out there and make sure your affiliate's being taken care of. But in addition to that, just being supportive now of National HBPA and coming on as a corporate sponsor. So as much as I know he would have loved to have been here, we've got him now on the big screen, and we're going to turn it over to you, Gunnar. And thank you again for making the time to try to be here, but still making the time to be here virtually.
Yeah, definitely preferred to be there than in the airport yesterday. So thank you, Eric. As Eric said, Gunnar LaCour, I'm president of Crims. If I had to sum it up, we are a parimutuel auditing company. Essentially, that would be our primary purpose for the HBPAs. And from a personal note, I just have to say before I get going, that last panel that you had on medication, it's been many years since I ran a state commission, but the fact that we're still talking about the effect on drugs having an actual effect versus just being able to detect it in a horse, it's wild to me. But nonetheless, I digress. I will talk about my subject. I got involved with the National HBPA because I am a third generation horseman. My father and grandfather were some of the best horsemen I've ever seen. And I think it's important, not just for all these various entities in racing to know, to understand distributions and how they work, but for the people that actually are supposed to benefit from them to understand it as well. So I'm gonna do my best. Oh, it's not letting me share, guys. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So I can't share my slides unless you give me a shot, which I don't need my slides. So if we can't figure it out, no problem.
Working on it.
All right. All right. Well, I'll just, oh, okay. Here we go. Let's see. There we go. All right. All right. So I will do my best to work through this. I'm a little technologically not disposed technologically sometimes, but I think I can manage it here. So I may or may not follow these slides as I get going, but I'll get the point across and we'll work through that. So ultimately I'm here because, as Eric said, whether you use us or not, I'm just, please go out and take some things away from this that you can actually enact and take some of these steps to make sure that your horsemen are getting everything that they're due for the hard work that they're doing. I understand that, personally, when it comes to being a horseman, there is not a lot of extra time. There is a focus on the horse, on the racing, on those aspects of the industry. And so sometimes these distributions, they get a little short shrift, just because you don't have the time, and I get it, but it is important, and I think putting in a little bit of effort will pay dividends. So what are we doing here? What's our goal? I've got something written up here, but basically, let's make sure that the horsemen, when you're talking about pari-mutuel wagering, they're getting their fair share to their purses and their breeders' funds. Those funds are going to change depending on the state. The amount going into each one is going to change depending on the state. But bottom line is, make sure your horsemen are getting what they're due. Um, you know, we there's a lot of reasons that they might not. I think that if we went across every entity in the industry, be it a track, be it an ADW, whatever it is, you are going to look across jurisdictions and find at least one place where things aren't going correctly. Pari-mutuel wagering is complicated. That is definite, and it's gotten more complicated over the years. And sometimes, for a variety of reasons that you see on the screen, people don't keep up, and people are fallible, and they're just getting it wrong, and it leads to some real problems, litigation in certain cases, and it's totally avoidable. Again, whether you use us or do it yourself. So I just want to walk through, at a very, very high level, some of the roadblocks and some of the ways to address the issue. And, if anybody has, wants further detail, wants to dig in a little deeper, I'm happy to help out, even informally. Just give me a shout. So, um, you know, I can pretty much guarantee, not just HBPAs, but any organization in this industry has one of these problems, if not multiple. Um, Number one, and especially for the HBPAs, particularly important. If you don't have the data, there's nothing you can do. You can't validate. I would say, the majority of people that HBPAs have talked to, worked with, they do have, they have something in their contracts that says that they can get the data. The question is, are they getting it? And if it's not in your agreement, then absolutely get that in there, that you can get this data, whether it's with your track or with your an ADW. Make sure that you're putting that in the contract. You want to get it directly from tote. So it's an somewhat independent set of numbers. It's not a spreadsheet that somebody's taken out of the tote data and plugged it in, because that could be wrong. That can be changed. Um, you'll get that every day as a set of PDFs. It's not the easiest thing to work with, hence our services, but you will be able to get that data, and then you can actually go validate, when you're getting a check cut or they're saying this is what we owe you. You can actually do the work. Otherwise, you're just completely on your own. Um, you can even go back and work with both the entities you're contracting with, again, tracks and ADWs, to validate what you're seeing, to ask questions. I mean, don't hesitate to ask questions. I know that, sometimes there's a relationship there that doesn't seem like it's, yeah, that asking questions is really in the cards, but don't be shy. Go ask questions. There's lots of people in this industry, even if it's not one of those groups, that'll help you. And the tote itself, if you find someone over there to work with, they can help you as well. Your commission. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about, don't rely on commissions too much, but your commission is a great source of information. They can really help you out, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, they can at least validate what you're seeing and help you understand what you need to be getting, because there are differences in data sets and what you need if you're going to do, if your horsemen are entitled to a percentage of a certain kind of handle, be it in track or on track, out of state, in state, etc., or geolocation, which is a totally different type of file. So you got to start there and kind of work through, make sure you're getting the right file sets for the types of distributions you need to do, and then move on from there. Again, it can be complex, so ask for help. Work with people in the industry that are friendly and or willing to support you. I think you'll find those people, certainly with us. but I think there are others as well that will be willing to help you. Um, so that's number one, get your data. If you can't get your data, then you're really just you're going nowhere. Number two, relying on commissions. Commissions are a great source of information, and their purpose is to ensure that these entities that you're contracting with um, are following the rules, statutory or regulatory rules. The problem is that that doesn't always mean they're going to cover everything that you guys, the HBPAs need to pay attention to. So and they're subject to some of these same problems we're talking about here. So they have limited resources. They have ingrained ways of doing things. They're not always going back and checking year over year over year. They're subject to their people just like anybody else is. And these people have done things a certain way and they just want to check the box and move on. And it's important that you question your assumptions as we'll talk about. But and of course, when you're in that box of statutory and regulatory authority, um, that doesn't necessarily cover your private agreements. So to the extent that under the Interstate Horse Racing Act and various other laws, you have to have a private agreement with the track, AW, et cetera. They're not going to be validating that your partner is complying with the requirements of your private agreement. They'll validate that there is a private agreement to say, okay, they're checking the box of this is required for the statute, but they will not go in and do the math for you, essentially. So if you're waiting for a commission to raise the flag on, hey, this track isn't, or this ADW isn't, or whoever it is not doing what they're supposed to do in some cases, you may be waiting a long time. Alternative gaming, functionally not an issue necessarily, but it's more of a mindset. Alternative gaming tends to be a shiny object out there, and alternative gaming has done great things for racing, changed the landscape in a lot of jurisdictions, and can't say enough for the value. But just because you have this alternative gaming, and just because the revenue stream is bigger than your parimutuel revenue stream, it's like when I make the argument at home, like it's the principle of the thing. It doesn't get me very far at home, but here I think it's important. You guys, your horsemen are working to create this this racing that these entities are making money off of, and so you should at least get what you've contracted for. And why throw away or ignore some dollars and cents out there? You collect those pennies long enough and they add up. And over year, it can add up quite a bit. And so, validating that, checking that, it's to me, it's a no-brainer. You want to, even if you've got big revenue streams elsewhere, don't ignore the parimutuel revenue stream. And then the last two kind of go hand in hand, time and resources. Everybody's strapped for that, especially HBPAs, and long-standing relationships with these entities and ways of doing things. You just have to question your assumptions. It's really key. And I understand that again, that horsemen have a lot of concerns, and this may get pushed to the back, but here's, I guess, my pro tip from an entity that does this for a living. We find young folks that are interested and wanting to get in the industry. I think there's a lot of those out there, want to learn. And so we give them that opportunity to learn and say, hey, here's, we're looking at this jurisdiction, and could you go out, and we give them some direction. Here's the statutes, here's the rules. Can you go out and take a look at these and bring us back, write down what you find, when somebody wagers $1 in each different way they can, whatever, ADW, on track, off track, et cetera, how are those distributed? And we have them write that down, and they bring it back. We look at what we have and say, look, here's the differences. and here's why the differences are, or possibly even, gosh, is that right? Should we go back and reassess this? Should we reach out to people, again, commissions and also the people, engaging in the wagering to validate this piece? Because gosh, it really does look a little questionable about that. So I think you guys will find, in the HBPA sort of world, there's a lot of young people that are interested in being a part of this, and this is very, interesting, easy way to get them engaged and can give them a unique opportunity to develop this knowledge. It also provides, what we do is it's really important to document. um, you know Create that document and keep it and update it and validate it, go back to it, set some time every year to check that, hey, do we need to update this? Do we need to take a fresh look at it? Maybe it hasn't changed in 5 years, but maybe you just take a fresh look at it anyways. And then again, go take that document to your commission and say, hey, here's what we have. And we feel like this is accurate, but maybe it's not. And what do you guys say? And who's the expert on your team? I'm sure you probably know them, and I'm sure they'd be happy to work with you to confirm what you're finding. So I know those are very high level, but I'm going to take it one step even higher here. Trust but verify. That's, you can have these great relationships with your tracks or ADWs or not. It can be bad. I tend to see that the relationships where you've had a good working relationship, that's where, you tend to kind of back off, which makes sense. But, and maybe you can get rid of the first two words and just verify. Just try to make it a habit. Try to get in there and make sure that your horsemen are getting everything they're entitled to. So, with that, that's the really the top level basics. I have a couple slides in here I could go through and talk about, all the detail on how we take that data out of these tote files and move it and stuff like that. But, I'm not going to dig really deep into that here, but I'd be remiss if I didn't put in my plug for our services. Again, if you use us, great. If you don't, I totally understand, but I think there's some really good reasons to utilize CRIMS. I'll talk a little bit about here. We are a non-profit, so we were created in California basically to solve the very problem I've been talking about, which is, we don't have in California tracks that say here's our numbers and horsemen that say here's our numbers. They just have our numbers, and we're the Bible. We don't get everything right 100% of the time, but I'd say 99.9 we do. There are, issues in the data and things like that is generated by tote that we have to go out and work on. You'll see that in some of these steps here. But ultimately we function as that independent third party that really goes out, and if there is an issue with the data, we work on it with people. We tend to get a good reception because of that. There's no history, bad relationship or good relationship. It's just we're looking to validate this, and we can go out on our customers' behalf to do that. And almost everybody, I'd say almost, is very happy to do that with us. And I would note that, as I said, in regards to California, when we were created 35 years ago, or I think it's 36 or 37 now, up until today, the Thoroughbred Owners of California is one of our most important and one of our primary stakeholders. So we have from the outset been designed to make sure that the horsemen are getting their fair share, are taken care of, and that we are responsive to their needs. Many of our services are designed to support their analysis of the racing and how wagering, and that's some very deep data analysis that we do for them. And certainly, beyond just validating that you guys are getting the money that you're entitled to, we can do analytics as well and things like that to help HBPAs analyze the racing. And that's, again, I'd like you to step even further. We take that data and move it into other areas for analysis. and support of any initiatives you guys have. But we're really, in this one, I'm just focusing on, how we can validate your guys and account for your guys' distributions. I think that, as a value proposition, I've talked about lack of time and resources to do these types of things. That's what we're here to do, is try to provide you guys with value. I think if you talk to Dave, or Ed, I'm sure both of whom, unless they were waylaid by air transport, are there. They'll tell you that I hope they'll tell you that we're a pretty good value, and that we are providing them something that will otherwise take quite a bit of time. And so, bottom line, we're here to provide you guys with an ongoing daily audit and reconciliation of what you're due, what your horsemen are due. Typically, those things are done. We do it on a daily basis, and then at the end of the month, you'll run a report and say, okay, here's what I should receive in commissions, in horsemen's commissions to the purse, to the breeders, etc. And then validate that against what you're receiving from your various partners. We are doing that all the time, not just numbers, but we do it for locations as well. So let's say you have a list of 100 locations that you're the entity you're contracting with will send your signal to. We will, we have rates from you that says, hey, we're entitled to this. We run those numbers every day, and then all of a sudden one day it pops up and there's a new location. Not necessarily a problem. You want to distribute your signal as far and wide as possible, but you also want to make sure you're capturing that and getting paid for it, and you know about it. And so when a new location pops up, we don't have a rate for that. We'll go out to the entity and to the HBPA, to our customer, and say, hey, this is new. We don't know about it. Do you know about it? Do you have a rate for it? If you don't, you should probably call these guys up, and then we work that out. Again, as I said, we're a neutral arbiter, so we're regularly going out to the tote companies and working with them and saying, hey, we use multiple different file types. We use two different file types to basically check against. So if we see any discrepancies, we'll even use records from different totes to validate our numbers as well. So we're regularly going out to tracks, to tote, to inquire on these discrepancies and work them out and make sure that we're all spot on and we agree, so that by the time you get to the point where at the end of the month and it says, hey, this is what you're owed, most of the time we've already been through that, and there's no issue. The you know and why I bring that sort of ongoing neutral arbiter position up is because again, being proactive is key. By using us, you are being proactive. If you're doing it yourself, be proactive. You won't need a subsequent audit. If you're doing this daily, even monthly, that is a huge plus. It means you don't have to go back. If you start going back and do multiple years and things like that, even multiple months can be difficult, but multiple years is tough, let me tell you. So we have some real life examples that happened in just the last few years. You have, $750,000 in underpayment to the purse fund in Illinois. That was an issue that came up. Pennsylvania, you had some concerns that the on-track wagers via the ADW were being treated as off-track, not on-track, and therefore providing less money to the horsemen. And so, both of those specific examples would be caught by any kind of, as through us, or if you did it on your own, through reconciling these numbers regularly. Certainly, the last thing you want to spend money on is litigation. So I see us as a pretty cost-effective alternative to that. And like I said, once you set it up, these things are totally avoidable. You will be on top of them right away. And yeah, it can avoid paying lawyers, which I am a lawyer, so I know how much that costs. So takeaways, look, just question what you've been doing, especially if you haven't looked at it for a while. One of my developers used to say, know thy data, right? As our, at CRIMS, that's our mantra, know thy data. If you understand your data and can use it, that's power. And be proactive, do those regular reconciliations, make sure you're staying on top of it and not relying on others to do it for you. So, just have to end with the get your data. If you take nothing else away from today, get your data. So that's it. Very top level, I know. Happy to answer any specific questions, or if you have questions, as you go forward this year, please don't hesitate to reach out. So
Thank you,
thank you.
Gunnar. Sorry you can't see us as far back here in the audience, but I think we've got a few questions. But I wanted to kick off with one that you and I spoke about a little bit. Or maybe you can explain a little bit how the conflict of interest. I think there was a question, at least in my mind, about an affiliate who could use some help, but then you also work for the racetrack. Can you kind of diagram that out so that people understand that there's still an availability there from you?
Yeah, so we do work for lots of racetracks. And it's, I can use the California example. We were created to be neutral. The data is the data. I can't, other than when there are discrepancies between files where maybe a guest and host, and that's getting very granular, but don't agree, and we have to go figure out why. There are technical issues that come up. But at the end of the day, we're going to get those numbers in and we're going to present them. And it is a math equation. My math equations can't lie. I can make technical errors or some piece of data won't come in or whatever the case is. But if you have a track that you have an agreement with and we service that track, actually, I tell you, in certain cases, like I believe Dave, I think maybe we have one or more of his tracks, but regardless, when we actually already service a track, that's actually the best situation because we're already set up. So all we have to do is get it, we're already getting in that data. All we have to do is present it in two different places. And we're going to present the same numbers. We're going to validate those numbers the same way. There's going to be absolutely no difference between what that track sees and what you see, because there's just no way, math is math. 2 + 2 = 4. So end of the day, that's all we can do. And we will get the numbers right, regardless of who likes it or who doesn't.
Thank you. Got Ed Fanaski has a question, then we'll get one more behind that.
Less of a question. I just wanted to let everyone know we use CRIMS to track our export handle. So we have 8 different race meets each year that CRIMS processes the daily data files and gives us the data as far as to which sites around the world are betting on us into our pools and what are we generating from a host fee perspective that goes to purses. His team's great to work with. So if you find yourself able to utilize that and think that data might help you keep a better pulse on what's going on with your purses, I can certainly recommend Gunnar and his team. They're great to work with.
Thank you, Ed. There's a question.
Gunner's Doug Daniels. I had a question about how receptive are racetrack owners, especially those companies that own a number of different venues, how receptive are they to generating and providing their raw data to you, especially as it relates to HHR?
Yeah, so from parimutuel side, they're pretty used to it. We get people that want to fight just to fight sometimes, but we've never had anyone not do it. Let's put it that way. They should and most usually are legally required to send it to the horseman. And so sending it to us is functionally the same. Anybody that says otherwise is trying to make it sound harder than it is. HHR is a different sort of animal. So we've been knocking around trying to track some of the HHR data for a while. Parimutuel is very unique because everybody interacts in the parimutuel wagering system, meaning that because you have to take all the dollars and put them into a single pool, there is the intertote protocols that basically require most of the data. Now we still get variances, right? But most of the data is functionally the same, or the way it's presented is functionally the same. HHR, on the other hand, because it's not commingled across state lines, and by the way, commingling HHR across state lines, I think, is the next great step, and would be a real boon for horsemen to be able to build revenues even more. But that's a different story. Because it's not commingled across vendors. Each vendor has its own set of, it has its own data set. Not necessarily dissimilar from Tote, how we have to say, their reports are slightly different amongst them, and we have to identify that. And so it's not, it doesn't preclude us doing it. It's just that I think at this point, nobody's really we haven't taken the step forward with any HBPA or any other entity. I was thinking commissions would be a perfect place for this, to say, okay, we want to put the time and investment in to set up this new reporting. And then we got to because that is new, we got to get the folks on the HHR side to kick us their reports. So it isn't something we're currently doing, but it's not, necessarily something that can't happen.
Great.
Oh, and I would note that because HHR is not commingled, you don't have this sort of, again, use the neutral third party sort of thing. Tote, to some extent, even though they're owned by bigger racing entities, is somewhat neutral because, again, it's a math equation. You have to get that math right or it won't work. And so there is no centralized location like that. You would get individual files from each vendor. So it's, in some ways it could be somewhat less reliable, but ultimately I think, with all the various restrictions and rules that the commission has on it, and all the testing that goes on with these machines, I think you're probably going to get some pretty good data. So I think it's entirely possible.
Great information, Gunnar. I think that's all the questions, and we really appreciate you being here. Sorry you couldn't be here in person for sure, but thank you for that information, and hopefully we'll connect any other affiliates to you that want to get connected and get some CRIM service. So thank you.